authority, what are you thinking? Are you responsible? If so, to whom? Do you answer to Harper only? What happens when global warming catches up and lowers the boom? 75 million tons of coal could be barged or trucked someday. No impact study required if the PM gets its way. Dust and carbon emissions are the trade-offs when we sell to resource-hungry Asians to keep their economy well. Port Authority, what are you thinking? Are you responsible? If so, to whom? Do you answer to Harper only? What happens when global warming catches up and lowers the boom? Coal dust will settle in our lungs and our fishing streams. Birds bog beloved wetlands, safe only in our dreams. Coal dust in Fraser estuaries bound to take its toll. No wonder Washington State said no to this dirty coal.
Thanks very much, ladies. No, you definitely don't have to reply in song, but I know there was a question, several in there, but towards the end, about the coal and whether or not why we're taking this coal or proposing to take this coal.
Well, again, to take that question, certainly I'm happy to, and I would be nothing like as tuneful, so I'm glad I don't have to respond in kind. But you know, it's a good question, and fundamentally, it's really important to remember the nature of the relationship between Canada and the US. We're neighbours, we're the closest of allies, and our economies are linked by the largest trade flow between any two nations globally. So Canadian potash is exported through US ports, shoppers in Chicago buy goods that were imported through Vancouver, and that's the nature of the trading relationship between our two countries. It has been for a long time, and I'm sure it will continue to be the same.
Thank you. Sir, name and your question.
Hi, I'm Stephen Ramadhan from Surrey. I'm with the Birds Bog Conservation Society. My question is, I have a tremendous concern about the issue of transparency. I appreciate you use that word transparency. In my opinion, fundamental to democracy is the sense that things are transparent to the extent that the public has an opportunity to participate in the process. Given that, and Canada is currently ranked approximately 11th in terms of the world democracies, yet, in my opinion, we've had a lack of full access to public hearings. You just commented about that. However, what I'd like you to comment a little further on is this. The United States has environmental impact statements for all of their proposed coal dock facilities along the West Coast. The one in Bellingham or Cherry Point will take about 3 or 4 years, as I understand it. So my question is, and I believe that the credibility of your office and what you do will be increased if you do consider to do what I'm asking you to do, which is, would you consider full public hearings in the interest of promoting true democracy and access to the public, and will increase the credibility of whatever you do in the end? Thank you.
Thank you. And I refer to my earlier answer. The comparison between the project in Fraser Surrey Docks and the projects on the west coast of the US is comparing two very different things. One is a terminal that exists within an existing industrially designated area of land in our port to handling a commodity that's already handled in this port and has been for many years. And comparing that with a brand new terminal in an area that isn't currently used for industrial activity is comparing something that's very different and comparing something, of course, in two different national processes. So there is no trigger for a public hearing relating to Fraser Surrey Docks.
However, so remember, Fraser Surrey Docks has not handled coal before. So that's
coal has been handled through this port for many, many years.
Not Fraser Surrey Docks, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alejandro Frid, and I'm from Bowen Island, and I'm here just as a concerned citizen and the father of a young daughter, and therefore I'm interested in sustainability economically and environmentally beyond the short term and for multiple generations that go beyond my daughters. So, and climate change already is eroding the sustainability of many communities worldwide and raising havoc for a lot of poor people all over the world. And in fact, scientists estimate that to avoid the worst of climate disasters that will happen if temperatures rise 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, we need to drop from about 50,000 gigatons of greenhouse gases emitted in 2009 down to less than 47 gigatons by 2020. And that involves shutting down about 65% of the world's coal plants. So building new infrastructure for coal exports is the exact opposite of any kind of sustainability in the long term. So my question is, why isn't climate change explicitly part of your definition of sustainability and explicitly part of what the public is consulting on?
Thank you very much for the question. It's good to have the question raised, and thank you for being here. And firstly, I'd say that I'm sure everybody in this room shares your concern about sustainability, and all of us have chosen to live here in this area because of the beautiful environment that we're able to live in and amongst. And the questions you raise are good and important questions, but they're not questions that are within the scope of what the port does. We don't decide what commodities are traded. We are responsible for how commodities are traded, not what commodities are traded. So our role, as I've outlined, is to make sure that the trade that takes place through the port is done in a safe, efficient, thoughtful way, considering environmental and community issues as well as economic issues. And that's something that I believe we do very well. If you want to raise the question of what is traded, that's a question that needs to be raised with the federal government, not with the port.
Okay, we have a question from the pages here. So this question comes from Alejandro. He's from Vancouver. Marine vessels are responsible for 10% of emission responsible for smog formation, smog formation, and 3% of greenhouse gas emissions in Metro Vancouver region. Could Port Metro Vancouver consider regulating tightly emissions by imposing existing technologies on marine vessels, such as hybrid batteries and hybrid battery oil systems?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, there's a lot of work already taking place within the gateway to reduce emissions. As some of you may be aware, there's been a significant change in the regulatory regime in the whole of North America to introduce an emissions control area, which commenced just this year, that is reducing the level of sulfur in marine engines very substantially, which is a very positive step. As I outlined in my speaking notes, we have shore power in place for cruise ships, and we're actively studying introducing that technology aligned with the sort of the drift of the question for container ships as well. So we're taking a huge amount of steps forward to improve air quality and reduce ship-related emissions. We also have had a scheme in place for a number of years now, where, again, aligned with the question, we actually reduce harbour dues, reduce the cost of using the port to vessels that not just meet, but significantly exceed the federally mandated requirements for emissions control technology. So we already have incentives in place to do exactly what the question is suggesting, and we will absolutely be continuing to look at improving and increasing those incentives and those regulations.
My name is Colleen Ann Fee. I'm an alumna of Ward and Gervais Ladner Calgary office and a member of the Law Society of BC and Upper Canada. I'm here representing Cole Harbour Community Hoopers, who are a group of practitioners in community. I would like you to please identify the independent experts, independent of your stakeholders and your users, in the areas of science and medicine from whom you are seeking their expert advice relating to the coal expansion through the port.
Sure, thank you very much for the question. Rather than me try and reel it off from memory, what I would ask you to do is to look at our website, where for each of the projects we're considering, including of course the Fraser Surrey one, the studies relating to the project are available, and obviously when you look at the studies you'll be able to see who has done the studies in detail. But if once you've done that, you don't get the information that you're looking for, please do also email us via the contact email on the website, and we'll be happy to provide you with further information if you haven't found what you're looking for.
And if you need more information today, I'm sure there's many people here from Port Metro Vancouver who'd be happy to give you more information about where to get those. Okay.
Roger Emsley from Delta. My question relates to the semi-trailers that are hauling containers to and from Delta Port. As you well know, those semi-trailers cause chaos in the Massey Tunnel. Have done for years. You're expanding, it's getting worse. When is Port Metro Vancouver going to get serious about looking at the alternatives, such as short sea shipping or short haul rail, or ensuring that those trucks are not using the Massey Tunnel during the peak hours? Because when there are no trucks, on the roads going to and from the port through the Massey Tunnel. Everything moves smoothly. But consistently, what we see is port trucks going south in the morning rush hour when there's only one lane going south, and the reverse is true in the afternoon rush hour when there's only one lane going north. I've asked this question many times, and the only response I get, well, it's not cost effective. There's an impact, huge impact on the communities, and it's time that you looked beyond the cost and found a way of developing alternatives.
The issue you raise is one that we're obviously well aware of and have put significant effort into making improvements, as has the provincial and as has the federal government. The South Fraser Perimeter Road will be a good step towards alleviating some of the traffic currently transiting through the tunnel that relates to the port. But also, we were of course very pleased, having lobbied with both the municipality of Delta as well as port stakeholders, to see the province put on their planning agenda the opportunity to sort of the study of a replacement for the George Massey Tunnel. Because as well as being a constraint to port traffic, as you say very clearly and very eloquently, it's a constraint for the community as well. So the combination of these infrastructure programs, plus much greater data we now have available from our GPS system that I mentioned in my speaking notes, gives us the opportunity to continue this major investment program to try and alleviate the issue that you raised.
Yes, my name is Brian Water. I'm from Crescent Beach, quiet village of Crescent Beach, and I do make money off working for the Port Metro cruise buses for the cruise ships. I'm retired. I do that on 3 days a week, and I do take people for the Disney Wonder. I did 2 days ago, and he put on a big video about Disney and listened to that all the way down from the airport to the shore. I'm also feel really good with the cruise ships are plugging in, and we have all these greenways, we have bike routes, we have carbon tax, we have transit levels. We all should be feeling very good about this. But at the same time, somewhere down in Wyoming and Montana is a massive open pitch mine, pardon me. That's a lot of machinery putting pollution in the air, hauling that onto trains. The trains, 128 cars for engines, are hauling them to the Delta Port. More machinery is putting them on ships. The ships go across, more pollution to China or India. More machinery takes off, and then it's blown and burned into our atmosphere and causes a lot of pollution, which in turn comes back over here. I think we had a 4-star smoke in Lower Mainland last year from Siberia or somewhere over that way. So the Port Authority feels they are the people that make the decisions, environmental decisions like the fox guarding the hen house. And it's federal as far as I understand. So with all these feeling good things that are going on, and the temperature of the world in danger of raising up. We've had, for example, again, averaged 160 tornadoes usually in the United States. In 2011, we had over 600 massive hurricanes, floods, you name it. Something's going on out there. I'm really concerned for my children and my grandchildren as far as this coal business. So I hope the Port Authority really has a lot of public hearings so we hear a lot more about this.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll just go on to the next question. I know there's lots of people who are in favor of some things and not. I just encourage you, keep your clapping if you could, just to a minimum so we can keep things moving forward. Sir?
My name is Frid. I am a physician. I have, besides my MD training, I have a master's in epidemiology and a doctorate of science. I did a lot of work in the area of tobacco, evidence-based, and to tell the truth, tobacco pales in comparison to what we're facing, and what we're facing immediately. Now, in your presentation, you talked repeatedly about sustainable growth. Sustainable growth isn't feasible. We cannot continue to have infinite growth on a finite planet. It just is not feasible. And the chickens are coming home to roost now. You'll get questions about ecological impacts here that become more and more severe, and very major ecological impacts. So I have a very simple question. When you support, and I want to say this, that you are trying to do the best job you can for the citizens of Canada. But there are times when our species has gone in the wrong direction, and we are really headed in the wrong direction now. So I have a simple question. When will the port, at its annual meeting, talk about sustainable shrinkage? instead of sustainable growth.
Thank you for your question. Again, you raise a lot of issues that I really don't have the ability to answer because they're much, much wider than board issues. But what I can say is that the mandate of the board is as set out, and it is, as we've described, to manage the growth in Canada's international trade, considering the impacts of that growth on the local community. And that's very much what we're focused on. I appreciate your acknowledgement of the fact we've put a lot of effort into that. Thank you.
Sure. Your name and your question.
Michael Russer. I live in Vancouver. I actually live above the port. I look down on the port and I watch it every day. And I just like to back up what the gentleman just said. There is no such thing as sustainable growth, and it's really not proper to say that. Just consult the dictionary to check those definitions. So when I was in school as a kid, what was laid at my feet in my generation was dealing with pollution and overpopulation. And I took those things to task. And I don't have children for that reason. I love kids. I love my friends' kids to come over. But at this point, pollution appears by every scientist in the world believing it's going to do us in. And it's only if a child born today, by the time they're in high school, we will have passed that point where irreversible climate change will be in full force. And feedback loops will be in place. Permafrost will melt. This is the epicenter of what's going on in the world. When it goes to the port, it's very likely the carbon that finally puts us over the top will go through this port. So I don't understand. What I do doesn't matter. What the people who care about this do doesn't matter. What matters is what politicians do and what bureaucrats do. And this port and the bureaucrats and you folks that are federal employees have much more power and much more ear. And there's business leaders here too, because they respond to what they're allowed to do. And somebody has got to stand up and say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to allow Canada's resources, which we could very well use the oil sands, oil in the future. But if we use it now, we're going to kill ourselves. And this port is going to try and export it. Just to simply say it's not in my purvey or it's not my mandate is disingenuous, and you're not being honest with yourself.
Hi, my name is Sam Harrison. I'm a resident of Vancouver. I'm 16 years old. And this is mostly a question directed at Mr. Reiser. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Mr. Russer just said that it's the port's job to facilitate trade in a safe, efficient, and thoughtful way. I'd like to add something to that, which is taken directly from the website of the Government of Canada, which says that the mandate of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority is to operate with broad public support in the best interest of Canadians. As chair of the board, do you think that if you were to approve the Fraser Surrey Docks coal terminal, would you in good conscience be able to say that that was a decision with broad public support that's in the best interest of Canadians present and future?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That's a good question. And the process is underway. There'll be further discussions, obviously, for the process. So it's getting ahead of saying what the decision will land on, a yes or a no. There's a lot of work that'll happen between now and then.
Can I rephrase it as, do you believe this project has broad public support, and do you think it's in the best interest of Canadians?
Yeah, it's difficult to say what degree of public support at this point, certainly. But I think the outcome will determine that, certainly, and I do believe there's a lot of public input, so it's difficult to measure the support at this time, Sam.
Any of these questions are good for support. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, my name is Doug Hawkwood. I'm a registered professional forester. I grew up and was educated in Vancouver. I now live in Qualicum Beach, but I consider this my hometown still. I'd like to thank the board for the work you do on behalf of managing our port. Mike Berners-Lee is the author of a book called How Bad Are Bananas? He's an expert on the carbon footprint of everything. A really interesting book. A lot of people would assume that a banana, because it's shipped a long distance, must be a high carbon footprint food. He demonstrates that's not the case. In fact, and it's partly because marine shipping moves a lot of volume at relatively low amounts of fuel burn to do it. So it turns out the banana is not a bad food if you're interested in your carbon footprint. He also has a very short chapter in that book called How Many Tons for a Life, in which he attempts to address the issue of, we know that climate change, if it continues unabated, will cause many people to die. And he says, well, how many tons will cause one person to die? He estimates 150 tons will cause one person to die. Now that's obviously an approximate estimate. Nobody can calculate these things accurately, but it represents an honest and objective attempt on the part of an expert to answer that question. So by that math, if we're going to export 50 million tons of coal out of Vancouver, that would produce, over 100 million tons of CO2, so that would cause roughly 700,000 people to die each year as a result of our exports. My question for the board is, how do you factor the deaths of large numbers, hundreds of thousands of people, into your considerations about whether or not we should export coal out of Vancouver?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with certainly the book that you're referring to, and certainly not an expert in the area to determine whether that's an accurate statement or not. But certainly we will factor in the public input what you're suggesting. We'll look at the science, independent experts. The gentleman in the book here you're mentioning could be part of that. We certainly can't. I can't sit here and concur that that's a fact or a scientific fact. I can't do that. I don't know that it's accurate. You don't have the book or the information with you. But I'd ask you to share that with us.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My name's Anne Grant, and I'm from Vancouver. And I understand that the part of your authority is to assess local environmental effects of what you do. But I don't understand, therefore, why you don't include climate change. Just because it's global doesn't mean to say that it isn't also local. I mean, yes, it's going to affect people all over the world, so we are to understand. But it's also going to affect us, so it is local. And this is a local concern. So read my comments. Okay. I think that makes sense.
Well, I for one have been quite amazed at the questions. As far as I know, this is not organized at all, the people who are saying much of the same thing. My name is Brad. I live on the east side. My children have grown up there. They're at UBC in Mindagape right now. I've been the beneficiary of your good work, good efficient work on the port here. I'm a voter, and from my leisure side at least, I've been the beneficiary of a well-organized port. Here's what the scientists are saying, okay? A couple weeks ago, we passed 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. That's up from 280 parts per million pre-industrial. Scientists are saying anything above 350 parts per million means positive feedback loops, inescapable death spiral. That means as the glaciers retreat, there's methane, there's no reflectivity.
Brad, do you have a question?
One more point, I'll make a question.
Thank you.
The scientists are also saying by 2040, 80% reduction in energy use. That means 80%. That means complete reduction. So your plans for increased infrastructure do not make economic sense. My question is this. You talked about your mandate, and we understand that. I'm a father, a brother, a husband. It's a little unfair to ask you this. Maybe you can ask yourself this tonight, and I ask this to the board members as well. From an ethical perspective, do you not think it's critical that you address all of these questions that all of these citizens have been asking? Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Brad.
And again, I'd say the questions you raise are important, but I'm afraid you are raising them with the wrong organisation. I have questions for the federal government. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Lynn Formby from West Vancouver. I happen to be a scientist, and I'm very tuned in to the changes that are happening in our environment, as are many people in this room. I do want to start my comments just by saying that I am tremendously impressed with what I heard today in terms of the scale and the complexity of the job that you folks are doing, and how your accomplishments are really quite phenomenal. And I also want to say that I appreciate that you're cut in a really lousy situation right now, that to continue with the way you've worked very successfully all these years, all of a sudden everything is changing. And the rules of the game haven't really officially changed yet. We don't have a carbon tax that would make it economically realistic to be exporting the carbon. You're still, the rules haven't changed, so you're still in the position of exporting it. You can be sure we have been taking these issues to the federal government, and they're not hearing us. The powers that be have been slow to change for many understandable reasons. So my question to Mr. Sylvester is, what can we do to help you change the situation? I've heard you on several occasions say, I'm sorry, it's just not my job to worry about climate change. What can we do to help make that your job?
First of all, I would say is that we are relaying the concerns that we have raised that are not within the scope of our process to the federal government as well. So you're getting that done as you would expect, but through our process. And to the extent you want to change the mandate of the board, which is indeed set by the federal government, again, you're talking to the right people.
I'm Erik Seitz. I'm president of the Crescent Beach Property Owners Association. And I totally applaud what you've done with Roberts Bank. You've done the right thing, spent millions, it's brilliant infrastructure. The east-west line, so that's the north-south, of course. The east-west Burlington Northern line hasn't received the same type of upgrade, and so for the past 20 years we've seen rail traffic go from roughly 5 cars to 18. So we have over 300% increase, so in Crescent Beach we have 2 level crossings. It's over 150 whistle blasts per day. Traffic is Surrey's only beach. Traffic's backed up well over a mile routinely. Will there be a study to see how some of these easily solvable problems can be addressed before we continue to stress out the north-south line? Because fundamentally, we have no position on what's sent. It's just how it's sent in terms of quality of life. And I really do appreciate you giving us the opportunity to present some of this, because you wouldn't know otherwise.
Yeah. Thank you. No, thanks for the question. Again, you raise a good question. It's an area we've done a lot of work in around the Lower Mainland. And as we see the traffic flows increase and change with the various different projects, studying the impacts of those and really working out where we can mitigate those impacts is something that we have a good track record in doing. So we certainly welcome the level of detailed information that you're bringing. And if you can perhaps find one of my team and talk in more detail, we can look at whether there are opportunities to cost effectively address some of the concerns you raise, because that's something we do indeed try and do.
And can we do that before a decision?
Well, we can't link unlinked decisions, because at the end of the day, we can certainly look at the issue you raise. Yes.
My name is John Cantrell. I'm a businessman in Vancouver for the last 55 years, and I applaud the Port Authority for what you've accomplished over the years. But this possibility of accepting one of the most filthy commodities on the planet into the heart of Vancouver and saying you have the environment and the health of the community you'll take into consideration, it just behooves me why you would even accept this or consider accepting this. We'll be polluted twice by all the coal dust covering Vancouver. It's an environmental disaster, a health disaster, and we'll be polluted when it comes back from China. And believe me, hiding behind it's not in our mandate just doesn't work anymore. You know, this is the 21st century, and it's time you morally stood up and did the right thing, and that is saying no to the coal.
Well, let me separate the two parts of your question. I've described the issues with regard to climate change in detail. But the issues you raise about coal dust and concerns about coal dust are something that we absolutely can deal with and do deal with. And a big part of the analysis being done about the Fraser Surrey project is to do with the potential issue that's being raised with coal dust. And that will be considered as part of the permit process for that project in the same way as it has been for all projects that have taken place with regard to coal in the Gateway over many decades.
Now, sir, if we can go on to the next question. Sir.
You know, it's not an independent study you're going to be doing. We all know that. Okay? If it was,
the study's available to you on our
shut it
website.
down.
We could move to the next question now.
Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Stephanie from White Rock, Stephanie Smith. At the beginning of this meeting, I've listened to the success of project completions, the continuation of funds to improve and expand operations, yet the striving force to provide a complete health assessment to sustain and keep the best health possible for Canadians is lacking, in my opinion. Fraser Health has indicated that they want to work with you on the Fraser Surrey Docks coal port decision involving U.S. coal, and they're calling for a comprehensive health impact assessment of the proposal prior to a decision being made. I think this is a good idea so that we can answer all questions concerning the potential health impacts of this proposal upon our communities. Will you commit today to working with Fraser Health to conduct a complete comprehensive health impact assessment prior to making a decision on the Fraser Surrey Docks coal port proposal?
Thanks for your question, Stephanie. We have already committed to working with Fraser Health on the health issues relating to the project permit process. There was a meeting, in fact, as recently as yesterday with the Fraser Health Chief Medical Officer and the Vancouver Coastal Chief Medical Officer. And we welcome the input that they bring to the table that is specifically with regard to the projects that are being considered.
Hi, Erik Frank. I'm a specialist in preventive medicine, and I'm also an elected official out at UBC, so I have some empathy for your split mandates. I want to ask a follow-on question, though, to that. In terms of what you're planning to include in the health scope. As has been talked about with several questions today, there are the local issues and coal dust issues, and there are the global warming issues. And I, like many other speakers, hope that you're going to consider the whole scope of health issues, of course, as any responsible organization would want to do. And I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were about the scope and the timetable for how you'll be working with the Fraser Health Authority. Thanks.
Well, we've worked with both health authorities in the region on multiple projects over the years, and as I say, we welcome their input. The questions that they raised with regards to the terminal, which is the project process that we're engaged in, are questions that where we welcome the feedback we've had from them. We've had some very constructive dialogue about how to address the concerns they raise. The questions they raise that are broader than that involve multiple stakeholders, and in fact are questions that are just as relevant 40 years ago as they are today. And it's good to see that there's been no incidents of health issues arising as a result of the transport of coal through the Vancouver Gateway, certainly not that they've been able to give evidence to. So we welcome the input. Where it relates to the terminal project, we absolutely are keen to work with them. Where they're raising broader issues than the project, then again, we will work to try and pull those relevant stakeholders together, but it's a broader issue than just the individual projects for some of the questions they're raising.
My name is Fraser Surrey, resident of Surrey. Spent a career in resource development, resource extraction. I fully understand your video, the nexus between economic activity, building the social capacity of society we want. Having said that, I also spent a career in environmental and community affairs, understand what responsible development looks like. And my concern is with transparency, openness. So a lot of people have spoken about various issues. Focusing on just one, the increase in rail traffic, north-south versus east-west. I'm asking this afternoon, do you have a commitment to work with the community in a transparent way, pardon me, share data on your projections for future rail traffic, and share the process of planning to cope with that?
Absolutely. We take very seriously our commitment to working with communities throughout the Lower Mainland where there are interests and concerns arising from port issues, and we'll be pleased to do that.
Yeah. So will you release your data? Will you be transparent?
Absolutely. It's on our website already, yes. And we will continue to post all the data that's being considered to the website, yes.
My name is Kate Gordanier-Smith. I'm from Burnaby. I'm a teacher, and I have a difficult job of helping young people who don't have the vote themselves live with these decisions, these hard decisions that you folks are making. So my question is, has there been a regional environmental impact analysis that's independent of Port Metro Vancouver regarding all the coal expansion proposals? A regional analysis?
As a single regional analysis for all of the activity of the port, I don't believe so. But as every project has come forward, the analysis of the impact of that project has been conducted, specifically targeting the issues related to those individual projects. That's the way that the system has worked for a long time.
And they are all tied together so that the complete impact is seen?
Cumulative impacts are absolutely considered, yes.
And that's on the site as well, and it's independent of Port Metro Vancouver. We can look up the researchers.
The information that was being considered for all of the projects is available on the project section of our website.
So my name is Eoin Madden. I'm the climate campaigner with the Wilderness Committee. We've got 30,000 members, and we've been a neighbour of yours for about 33 years. And we've never fought against the port on any issue. But I work at the Wilderness Committee. I work for my nieces and nephews, and our members are very worried about the situation concerning climate change, concerning some of the big decisions that are being made by the port. So we did offer the possibility for our members to write to ministers level in Kent and say,
you know, we want a cleaner future, please help us. The port isn't helping us. And we've had responses back. We actually had Minister Level respond to us and send us, unfortunately, back to the port. So I have two questions. The first one is, has the port actually seen that response from Minister Level? And the second one is, if Minister Level and Minister Kent continue to not take responsibility for climate change, will the board of Port Metro Vancouver continue to stick with its mantra that it will never deal with climate change?
Well, the port operates under the mandate described in the Canada Marine Act, which is enabled by federal legislation, and that's the mandate that we will stick to indeed.
I'm Margaret. I live right behind the Fraser Surrey Docks. I'd like to congratulate you on all the hard work and the wonderful things that Port Metro Authority have done in the past. I'd like just to read something here. Is the proposed coal port of Fraser Surrey Docks in the best interest of future generations? Instead, imagine the following scenario. All cities in their infancy, like present-day North Surrey and North Delta, have utilised their waterfronts for heavy industry. Eventually, industry is forced to move out, and gentrification takes over, like it has in Sydney, Paris, London, Toronto, or closer to home, Vancouver with False Creek and the Coal Harbour. From the Tunnel Bridge to Anniville and the Dees Slough, the Fraser is much more panoramic than the opposite bank. Look to the right and you have the North Shore Mountains and the lights of Rouse. Look left and you see the New Westminster Quay and the graceful arch of the Alex Fraser Bridge. Sunsets are unbelievable, while at sunrise the river is flooded with light and the high rises of the New West are turned into a city of molten gold, which is perhaps the most stunning stretch of undeveloped city waterfront in the world. Envisage a promenade with plantings like the Quay at New West, markets for fruit and vegetables, condos, townhouses, high-rises, theatres, casinos, concert halls, coffee shops, pubs, restaurants, and artist studios a la Grand Island. Ferries from one river bank to the other, as in False Creek, a fishing pier, children's playgrounds, a magnet to attract the fast-growing population of Surrey.
Now, do you have a lot more?
Yeah, I have a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime or if it's just a crazy dream, but I'm certain that 50 years from now my ideas will be a reality. I've loved watching all the things going on at the Surrey Fraser Docks, but the port is in the wrong place. It should have been built west of the George Massey Tunnel so that the river can be dredged deeply enough to accommodate the increasingly large container boats, as well as saving hours of travel, time, money, and environmental impact. Is Surrey going to be known as the Black Islands of the Lower Mainland?
I would certainly not expect so. You described very eloquently a lot of the things that we all enjoy about living in the Lower Mainland, and also the challenges that we face in trying to balance growth, which is so important to the economy, with maintaining the quality of life that we all enjoy. It's something I can assure you we're very committed to.
Yeah, that stretch of the river should not be a port. It should be it's the only waterfront in North Surrey.
Thank you.
So, just want to make sure that people remember of these ones that we have collected that we didn't have a chance to get to today. As I mentioned, they will be posted with the answers on Port Talk. If you have questions about that, you can certainly ask any of the staff here today, but it's porttalk.ca and be posted in the coming week. That concludes the formal portion of today's agenda. We do invite